Hi, my name is Justin, aka Ghost Reader, and today I am going to do a book review, and that is a review of the book The Deficit Myth, Modern Monetary Theory and the Birth of the People's Economy by Stephanie Kelton. This book was published by the Hachette Book Group. I was given this as an ARC from NetGalley, so I'd like to thank them at NetGalley for the ability to review this book. And this book publishes today, so you can actually pick it up from your favorite bookstore. This was a very interesting pick for me. I don't really know much about the economy. I think I've read one or two other economy related books, but none that really investigated a particular theory. So this book goes into the modern monetary theory and how, or MMT, and how that could be used today in order to help the United States achieve its goals of making, or at least we hope, its goals of making their citizens' lives better. So basically, it does this by the author Stephanie. She actually was an advisor to the Democrats on the budget commission at one time. Bernie Sanders picked her as an economic advisor, and basically she says that the fear that we have about the deficit, and the fact that it is growing, is unfounded, and that actually the fact that we have a deficit is actually a good thing and not something that we should be scared of. And basically she covers 6 myths in this book, and those myths are: one, that the federal government should budget like a household; two, that deficits are evidence of overspending; three, that the deficit that we have today will burden the generation in the future. The fourth myth is that deficits are harmful because they crowd out private investment and undermine long-term growth. The fifth is that the United States is dependent on foreigners because of the fact that we borrow, or people have borrowed through the use of American treasuries. And the last one is that entitlements, or like Social Security and Medicaid, are driving us towards a long-term fiscal crisis. And basically, she goes through each one of these one by one and shows why, according to modern monetary theory, that these particular myths don't describe the reality of how things are. So basically, the foundation of the whole theory is that are really preoccupied with balancing budget sheets like we do in households. However, unlike households, the United States is actually the issuer of currency, not a user. Like, we're all users. We use the money, but we can't issue U.S. dollars. The United States can issue dollars and thus can't run out of dollars, much like the banker in the game of Monopoly. Also, they see the U.S. government as, instead of needing your taxes to spend, that in order for things or money to be spent, that the U.S. government has to actually spend that money first and then collect it back in taxes. So the main focus of modern monetary theory is to get the unemployment rate basically down to zero, use as much of our economic resources as possible, basically, in doing so, spending money to ensure that those things are possible, which means that you do have to run a deficit. However, the deficit, just having a deficit doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It means, according to modern monetary theory, that if you're doing everything right, that you are actually maximizing the potential of the economy. So instead of having unemployment like we do now, they're actually, in order to keep inflation under control, there is a natural unemployment rate. So there are actually people out here who are unemployed, not because there's something wrong with them, but just simply because the jobs do not exist. And it's kept that way because, if according to the way we work things now, or the beliefs now, if we allowed everyone to be employed, inflation would go up, and that's something you don't want. And we control that through the Federal Reserve, or monetary policy. MMT wants Congress to be more involved and actually use the budget to our advantage. So there is a lot in this book, a lot of things that challenge my beliefs on how the deficit worked. But if she is to be believed, and there's the people who hold this particular theory to be true or to believe, we can actually fund everything that we need. So basically, you use deficit spending to make sure that you can fund things like Social Security, welfare, free college tuition, or at least affordable college tuition. You can fund all that, make sure everyone is living the best economic and healthy life that they can, and by doing that, increasing the money in the general population and the amount of wealth that can be generated in the population, you can actually run the deficit and be just fine and not have inflation go out of control. So it's a very different way of looking at the deficit instead of looking at it as something that needs to be immediately destroyed, which it can be actually, this book says, without too much trouble. If we wanted to, we can get rid of the debt, national debt, overnight. Of course, that will wipe out the U.S. Treasury market, so there are some issues there. But we can actually use spending responsibly now. It's not just like, let's print dollars to all galore and, deal with hyperinflation. But doing it in a responsible way, we can actually fund everything we need, make sure that our citizens are happy, none of them are unemployed, and still get the outcomes that we need. One thing I find really interesting is the federally, publicly funded guaranteed federal job until you can get back on your feet and go back into the private workforce, which would be great for when we're facing recession or like a time like this where there are a lot of people out of work and they're all just sitting on unemployment. Rather have them work at these, well, I mean, we have a pandemic going on, so it's a little bit different, but say another recession were to hit and we have all these people out of work, you can use these federally guaranteed jobs to get those people at least working in the public sector at jobs in their communities that benefits their communities. And then when the economy starts to come back around and the private sector needs more people, they can actually start picking people from the public sector. And since the government is making, like, say, putting at a livable wage, say if they did that $15 an hour, which is a semi-livable wage, all those people coming out the public sector were probably making more than $15 afterwards. And it's been put, this type of federal like guarantee or government guarantee job has been put in place in different countries, but not permanently. It's been used as a temporary measure for the most part. So this is a very interesting book. So I would like to see some critiques to this theory, because is it that there are actually a lot of problems with this theory, or is it just that people just don't want to change their way of thinking from what's always been done? So I thought that this was a very interesting book. Definitely brings a whole new perspective on how you can see the deficit and how the economy works. So I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I think that if you are looking at different ways to look at the economy, how it could actually, alternative ways to how it could work than where we are now, constantly arguing over whether or not to raise taxes on the rich or to cut the taxes on the rich and then cut spending in other places like Social Security, Medicaid, and stuff like that. I think that this would be a great book for you to read. So that is the end of this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see more videos from me, please subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at GhostReads28, on Instagram actually, at Justin Ghost Reader, on Goodreads. The link to that's down in the description box below. So as always, keep reading, and Black Lives Matter.